You're operating at a fraction of your capacity right now. Not because you lack potential, not because you're not capable, but because you've accepted limits that aren't real. You've drawn a line around what you think you can do, what you believe is possible for you, what feels safe and comfortable and manageable. And you live inside that line, day after day, year after year, never testing whether the line is actually real or just something you invented to protect yourself from discomfort. But here's the truth. That line is fiction. Those limits are self-imposed. The boundaries you think define your capabilities are just the edges of your comfort zone, not the edges of your actual potential. Your real capacity is far beyond where you currently operate, far beyond what you currently believe is possible, far beyond the comfortable space you've been living in. But you'll never access that capacity by staying where you are. You'll never discover what you're truly capable of by doing what you've always done. You'll never expand your limits by respecting them. The only way to grow beyond your current limitations is to push against them, daily, deliberately, consistently. Not occasionally, not when you feel motivated, not when conditions are perfect. Daily, every single day. Push yourself beyond what feels comfortable, beyond what feels easy, beyond what you did yesterday. This is how you expand, how you grow, how you access the capacity that's been dormant inside you. Most people never do this. They find a comfortable level and they stay there. They develop routines that work and they never push beyond them. They achieve a certain standard and they maintain it without ever testing if they could exceed it. And they wonder why their lives don't change, why they feel stuck, why they're not growing. It's because they're not pushing. They're managing, maintaining, staying inside their established limits. But you're different. You understand that growth only happens at the edge of comfort, that expansion only happens when you push against resistance, that the version of yourself capable of the life you want doesn't exist yet. You have to create that person by pushing beyond who you currently are. So let me show you exactly what it means to push yourself beyond your limits daily and why this practice will transform everything. First, understand that your perceived limits are mostly psychological, not physical. You think you can't do another rep, but you can. You think you can't work another hour, but you can. You think you can't handle more stress, but you can. The feeling of "I can't" is usually your brain trying to protect you from discomfort, not an accurate assessment of your actual capacity. Your brain is wired for survival, not achievement. It wants to conserve energy, avoid pain, minimize risk. So when you start pushing into uncomfortable territory, it sends signals. Stop. This is enough. You've done plenty. Time to rest. But those signals aren't telling you that you've reached your actual limit. They're telling you that you've reached the edge of what's comfortable, the edge of what's familiar, the edge of what your brain considers safe. And most people listen to those signals. They interpret "this is uncomfortable" as "this is my limit." So they stop, they pull back, they respect the false boundary. But if you can learn to recognize these signals for what they are, protective mechanisms, not actual limits, you can push past them. You can go further than you thought possible. You can expand your capacity beyond what you believed was your maximum. The marathon runner who hits the wall at mile 20 and keeps running discovers they can go further than their brain said was possible. The entrepreneur who feels overwhelmed and pushes through anyway discovers they can handle more than they thought. The student who feels like they can't study anymore but pushes for another hour discovers their mental endurance is greater than they believed. Every time you push past the discomfort signal, you prove to yourself that the limit wasn't real, and you expand the boundary of what you believe is possible. Second, recognize that pushing beyond limits is a daily practice, not an occasional event. Most people push themselves when they're motivated, when they're inspired, when they have a big goal or a looming deadline. But then they go back to comfortable routines. They push hard for a week, then coast for a month. They exceed their limits occasionally, then spend most of their time well within them. That doesn't create lasting expansion. That creates temporary effort followed by regression back to baseline. Real growth happens when pushing beyond limits becomes a daily practice, when every single day includes some deliberate discomfort, some intentional push past what's easy. It doesn't have to be dramatic. You don't have to destroy yourself every day, but you do have to do something that pushes you, something that requires effort, something that takes you beyond yesterday's performance. One more rep than you think you can do, one more hour of focused work than feels comfortable, one difficult conversation you've been avoiding, one task you've been procrastinating on because it's hard. Small daily pushes compound, they accumulate, they shift your baseline. What feels like pushing beyond your limits today becomes your normal operating level in 3 months, which means you can push even further from that new baseline. But this only works if it's daily. Occasional pushing doesn't compound, it just creates spikes of effort with long valleys of comfort in between. And valleys don't build capacity. Only consistent pushing builds capacity. Third, accept that growth lives in discomfort. This is the part most people can't stomach. They want growth without discomfort, progress without pain, expansion without the feeling of strain. But that's not how it works. Comfort is the enemy of growth. When you're comfortable, you're not expanding, you're maintaining, and maintaining doesn't create transformation.
Discomfort is the signal that you're pushing into new territory, that you're doing something your system hasn't adapted to yet, that you're creating the stress that forces adaptation and growth. Your muscles don't grow from comfortable workouts. They grow from being pushed beyond their current capacity, experiencing micro-trauma and rebuilding stronger. Your mental capacity doesn't grow from easy thinking. It grows from wrestling with complex problems that strain your current understanding, creating new neural connections. Your emotional resilience doesn't grow from avoiding difficult situations. It grows from facing challenges that push you beyond your comfort zone, proving you can handle them. Your skills don't improve from doing what you're already good at. They improve from attempting things you're bad at, struggling through the awkwardness, and developing new capabilities. Discomfort is the price of admission to growth, and if you're not willing to pay it, you don't get to grow. So you have to make peace with discomfort. Stop seeing it as a problem to avoid and start seeing it as a signal that you're in the right place, that you're doing the work that actually creates change. Fourth, understand that your limits expand through progressive overload. You can't go from your current capacity to maximum capacity in one jump. You can't take someone who's never run and have them run a marathon tomorrow. You can't take someone who's never studied physics and have them solve quantum equations today. Expansion happens progressively. You push slightly beyond your current limit. Your system adapts. Your new normal is now what used to be your maximum. Then you push slightly beyond that new normal and repeat. This is progressive overload, the principle that creates growth in every domain. In the gym, you lift a weight that's challenging. You adapt. It becomes easier. You add more weight. You adapt. It becomes easier. You keep adding weight progressively, and you keep getting stronger. In your career, you take on a project that stretches you. You figure it out. It becomes manageable. You take on something harder. You figure that out. You keep increasing the difficulty, and you keep expanding your capability. In your personal life, you have a difficult conversation. You survive it. It becomes less scary. You have harder conversations. You get better at them. You keep pushing the difficulty level, and you keep developing your emotional courage. The key is that each push is slightly beyond your current capacity, not so far that you fail and get discouraged, but far enough that it requires real effort, real strain, real adaptation. 10% more, one level harder, one step further. Whatever measurement makes sense for what you're doing. The point is that you're consistently pushing just beyond what you did yesterday. And over time, those small pushes compound into massive expansion. The weight you're lifting now would have seemed impossible 6 months ago. The projects you're handling now would have overwhelmed the person you were a year ago. The conversations you're having now would have terrified you 2 years ago. Progressive overload, applied daily, creates extraordinary expansion over time. Fifth, realize that pushing beyond limits isn't about self-punishment. Some people hear push yourself beyond your limits daily and think it means destroying yourself, working until you break, ignoring all signals, grinding relentlessly without rest. That's not what this is about. That's not sustainable. That's not healthy. That leads to burnout and injury, not growth. Pushing beyond limits is about deliberate, strategic discomfort. It's about challenging yourself in ways that create adaptation, not breakdown. It's about expanding capacity, not depleting it. There's a difference between productive pushing and destructive pushing. Productive pushing: you train hard, then you recover. You push your limits during the work period, then you let your system adapt. You create stress, then you create the conditions for that stress to make you stronger. Destructive pushing: you train hard, then you train harder without recovery. You push constantly without allowing adaptation. You create stress on top of stress until your system breaks down. The goal is progressive challenge with adequate recovery. Push, adapt, push further. Not push, push, push until you collapse. This means you need to be smart about how you push. You need to understand the difference between "this is hard and I should push through" versus "this is damaging and I should stop." Muscle fatigue during a workout? Push through. Joint pain that signals injury? Stop. Mental strain while learning something difficult? Push through. Mental exhaustion that signals burnout? Rest. Emotional discomfort during a challenging conversation? Push through. Emotional breakdown that signals you need support? Get help. The ability to distinguish between productive discomfort and destructive stress is crucial. You want to live at the edge of your comfort zone, pushing consistently, not so far past it that you're damaging yourself. Sixth, embrace the identity shift that comes from daily pushing. When you push yourself beyond your limits daily, you're not just building capacity, you're building identity. You're becoming a different type of person. Most people identify as someone who does what they can do comfortably. I'm a person who can handle this much, who can do this well, who operates at this level. But when you push daily, you start identifying as someone who exceeds limits. I'm a person who does hard things, who pushes when others quit, who expands their capacity constantly. That identity shift is powerful, because once you see yourself as someone who pushes beyond limits, the behavior becomes natural. It's not a struggle, it's just who you are. You don't have to psych yourself up to push. You don't have to fight internal resistance. You just do it, because pushing is what you do. It's part of your identity. And that identity attracts different opportunities, different people, different outcomes. People who push beyond limits daily become the ones others turn to for hard projects, the ones who get offered challenging opportunities, the ones who build extraordinary capabilities that create extraordinary results.
When you're pushing daily, the day-to-day progress can feel invisible. You're 1% better than yesterday. That doesn't feel significant. But if you track your progress, if you document your expansion, you create visible evidence that the pushing is working. Track your weights in the gym. You can see yourself getting stronger week by week. Track your productivity metrics. You can see yourself handling more with less stress. Track your skills development. You can see yourself doing things that were impossible 3 months ago. This evidence serves multiple purposes. First, it proves the process works. When you can see objective data showing your expansion, you can't doubt whether pushing is creating results. The numbers don't lie. Second, it builds momentum. Seeing progress motivates more effort. Success breeds success. Evidence of expansion makes you want to expand further. Third, it recalibrates your sense of what's possible. When you look back at where you were 6 months ago and see how far you've come, you realize your current limits are just as arbitrary as your old limits were. If you've expanded this much, you can expand more. Eighth, build a daily pushing practice into your routine. This can't be random. It can't be when you feel like it. It has to be systematic, built into your daily structure. Every day, you have a built-in opportunity to push beyond limits. It's part of your routine. Maybe it's in your morning workout. You always do 1 more set than you think you can, or 1 more minute on the run, or 5 more pounds on the lift. Maybe it's in your work. You always tackle the hardest task first, or you always work 30 minutes past when you want to stop, or you always take on one task that's slightly beyond your current skill level. Maybe it's in your personal development. You always have one conversation that makes you uncomfortable, or you always do one thing that scares you, or you always learn one new thing that challenges you. Whatever it is, it's consistent, it's daily, it's non-negotiable. This removes the decision fatigue. You don't have to decide whether to push today. You push. That's what you do. The only question is where and how you'll push. Ninth, surround yourself with people who push their limits. The people around you either normalize growth or normalize comfort. If everyone around you is comfortable with their current level, staying where they are, not pushing, then pushing will feel weird, abnormal, like you're being extreme. But if you surround yourself with people who are constantly pushing their limits, expanding their capacity, doing hard things, then pushing becomes normal, expected, just what people do. Your peer group sets your standards. If you're the one pushing hardest in your group, you'll feel resistance. You'll feel like you're doing too much. You'll be tempted to pull back to match the group norm. But if you're surrounded by people who are all pushing, who are all growing, who are all expanding, then you have to push just to keep up. The group norm pulls you forward instead of holding you back. Choose your circle carefully. Spend time with people who make you want to be better, who inspire you through their own pushing, who normalize the daily practice of exceeding limits. 10th, remember why you're pushing. Pushing beyond your limits daily is hard. Some days you won't want to do it. Some days you'll be tired, stressed, busy, distracted. On those days, you need to remember why this matters. You're not pushing because you hate yourself. You're not pushing because you're trying to prove something to others. You're not pushing because you think who you are now isn't good enough. You're pushing because you have a vision of who you could become, and that person, the version of you with expanded capacity, developed skills, proven resilience, doesn't exist yet. You have to create that person, and you create them through daily pushing, through choosing discomfort over comfort, through doing hard things when you'd rather do easy things. Every day you push, you're building that future version of yourself. You're expanding your capacity to match your vision. You're closing the gap between who you are and who you want to be. That's worth the discomfort. That's worth the effort. That's worth the daily discipline of pushing beyond what feels easy. Now let me tell you what happens when you push yourself beyond your limits daily. In the first week, it's uncomfortable, really uncomfortable. Every day requires conscious effort, willpower, discipline. You're fighting against your brain's desire to stay comfortable. After 2 weeks, you start adapting. The pushing is still hard, but it's becoming more familiar. You're learning what your edge feels like. You're getting better at recognizing the difference between this is hard and this is harmful. After a month, you notice changes. You're stronger than you were, more capable, more resilient. Tasks that seemed impossible 4 weeks ago are now challenging but doable. Your capacity has expanded. After 3 months, the expansion is undeniable. You're operating at a level that would have seemed impossible when you started. And what's wild is that it now feels normal. Your baseline has shifted. What used to be your maximum is now your starting point. After 6 months, people start noticing. They comment on how much you've changed, how much you're capable of, how much you've grown, because the compound effect of daily pushing has created visible transformation. After a year, you're a different person, not metaphorically, literally. Your capacity in every area you've been pushing has expanded so dramatically that you barely recognize the person you were 12 months ago. And here's what's powerful. The pushing becomes easier, not because the challenges get easier, but because you get stronger. Your capacity for handling difficulty expands. What used to feel like maximum effort now feels manageable. You've expanded your limits so far that your old maximum is now your new normal, and you can push even further from that new baseline. So, here's what I want you to do starting today. Choose one area where you're going to push beyond your limits daily. Just one to start. Don't try to push everything at once. Maybe it's physical. You're going to push your body every day. One more rep, one more minute, one more pound, something that takes you past comfortable. Maybe it's mental. You're going to push your mind every day, one harder problem, one new concept, one more hour of focused work, something that strains your cognitive capacity. Maybe it's emotional. You're going to push your courage every day, one uncomfortable conversation, one vulnerability, one fear faced, something that challenges your emotional comfort zone. Maybe it's skill-based. You're going to push your capabilities every day, one task that's slightly beyond your current skill level, one practice session of something you're bad at, something that forces development. One area, one daily push, deliberate, consistent, progressive. And then do it every single day, no matter what. On the days you feel great, push. On the days you feel terrible, push. On the days you're busy, push. On the days you're tired, push. The pushing is non-negotiable. It's what you do. It's who you are. Track your progress. Document your expansion. Build evidence that it's working. Surround yourself with people who normalize pushing, who inspire you through their own growth, who normalize the daily practice of exceeding limits. Your peer group sets your standards. If you're the one pushing hardest in your group, you'll feel resistance. You'll feel like you're doing too much. You'll be tempted to pull back to match the group norm. But if you're surrounded by people who are all pushing, who are all growing, who are all expanding, then you have to push just to keep up. The group norm pulls you forward instead of holding you back. Choose your circle carefully. Spend time with people who make you want to be better, who inspire you through their own pushing, who normalize the daily practice of exceeding limits. Your peer group sets your standards. If you're the one pushing hardest in your group, you'll feel resistance. You'll feel like you're doing too much. You'll be tempted to pull back to match the group norm. But if you're surrounded by people who are all pushing, who are all growing, who are all expanding, then you have to push just to keep up. The group norm pulls you forward instead of holding you back. Choose your circle carefully. Spend time with people who make you want to be better, who inspire you through their own pushing, who normalize the daily practice of exceeding limits. Your peer group sets your standards. If you're the one pushing hardest in your group, you'll feel resistance. You'll feel like you're doing too much. You'll be tempted to pull back to match the group norm. But if you're surrounded by people who are all pushing, who are all growing, who are all expanding, then you have to push just to keep up. The group norm pulls you forward instead of holding you back. Choose your circle carefully. Spend time with people who make you want to be better, who inspire you through their own pushing, who normalize the daily practice of exceeding limits. Your peer group sets your standards. If you're the one pushing hardest in your group, you'll feel resistance. You'll feel like you're doing too much. You'll be tempted to pull back to match the group norm. But if you're surrounded by people who are all pushing, who are all growing, who are all expanding, then you have to push just to keep up. The group norm pulls you forward instead of holding you back. Choose your circle carefully. Spend time with people who make you want to be better, who inspire you through their own pushing, who normalize the daily practice of exceeding limits. Your peer group sets your standards. If you're the one pushing hardest in your group, you'll feel resistance. You'll feel like you're doing too much. You'll be tempted to pull back to match the group norm. But if you're surrounded by people who are all pushing, who are all growing, who are all expanding, then you have to push just to keep up. The group norm